Hello there folks, back again for another video. In this one we're going to be having a look through the new Order Battletome for the Stormcast Eternals and the new edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So this is the second of the Battletomes that's been released for Warhammer Age of Sigmar in the new edition. And it is a look at the new revamp of the Stormcast Eternals and the way that they have developed and changed since the last edition, with the inclusion of the Ruination Chamber as part of their military order, and the going away of the Sacrosanct Chamber as well. So I'm just going to have a quick flick through all of the lore and background stuff that they've included in the Battletome this time around, give you an idea of how it all looks. So yeah, you've got all the classic stuff that you'd expect. So there's a fairly hefty amount of stuff going through there, as you can see, all the way to the background of the different elements of the Stormcast Eternals. And then you have all the different war scrolls, of which there are many, spearhead rules, path to glory, and the rules of renown as well, for your armies of renown as well, which I think is quite nice. So yes, getting stuck in. Once again, we get started off with a very nice introduction. This one, again, focuses in on Callus and Toll as the main sort of narrators, alongside this fellow, who I believe his name is Valius. I think it's Valius. Yes. What was it? Yeah, Valius. So yes, Valius is sort of speaking about his time as a Stormcast Eternal in some of the excerpts and stuff like that. And you get a little bit of a taste behind the scenes of what it's like to be a Stormcast Eternal as well. So there's a really nice focus, at least for the initial part of the book, on the current conflict and what's been going on. So you have the war for the living city, as you can see there, and the defense of Thyria. And once again, much like with the Skaven book, you get a sort of gatefold map here, which gives you a look at the fall of Fort Gardus, which was one of the big fights, and would also be it was also effectively the end of that part of the Dawnbringers Crusade. And then you also have some more stuff there as well. And this kind of gives you a nice look into another realm. So obviously in the Skaven Battletome, we got a look at Akshi and the Realm of Fire. Whereas in this one, we're getting a look at Gairan, the Realm of Life, and how that all sits within the wider sphere of things and the different realms themselves. So a nice little breakdown of the conflict there. Look at the Hallowed Knights and the alliance between the Stormcast Eternals and the Sylvaneth as they look to hold off the forces of Nurgle, and by extension the Skaven as well. And there you can see said Hallowed Knights kicking ass and taking names against the Skaven. So yes, there's a really good breakdown of kind of who the Stormcast are and what the Stormcast believe and what they do. There's a bit of an excerpt here about the Sacrosanct Chamber and why they've been recalled. It's a law reason for them to limit the amount of miniatures they have to worry about as part of their range, effectively. But it's a nice little section there to kind of give you a bit of a law reason why they're no longer part of the current conflict. That's a fantastic piece of artwork showing the reforging process, and the apotheosis and stuff, the Anvil of Apotheosis, and sort of bringing back the Stormcast Eternals. It really sort of nails the grimdark feel that I think they've managed to get across in the new edition, or at least that's the third and fourth edition, of Age of Sigmar has really kind of nailed the grimdark side of things, as well as that kind of high fantasy element that you get with Age of Sigmar. And artwork like this is just a brilliant exploration of that in a different forms. And you have a little bit of a chat here about the way that Ion's Cryptborn was trying to work out a way to stop the reforging process from slowly degrading the souls of each of the Stormcast Eternals, and how that failed, and they've decided to go down a different route with the formation of the Ruination Chamber and the introduction of Memorians, who are there to kind of help ground members of the Ruination Chamber, the Reclusians and stuff, in the hopes of keeping them in fighting form against the forces of the enemy. Get to learn a little bit more about the Stormkeeps. So this one is one of the ones, I believe this is the one from Akshi. I can't remember which one they say this one is. Fort Venga or something. Or the Precipicarium. I think that's meant to be the Precipicarium there. But it gives you an idea of the kind of massive fortress monastery style things that they've got for the Stormcast Eternals. Kind of obviously a callback to Space Marines and the way that they kind of set up as well. But I think one of the defining things about this particular set of rules, and it's something that I've really enjoyed seeing as I've read through it, is that this very much reinforces the fact that Stormcast Eternals are very different from Space Marines in a massive amount of different ways. One of the things that people always say is they go with the idea of, Sigmarines, they're just Space Marines, but they're in a fantasy world. I don't think that's the case. Yes, they're clad in heavy armor and all that kind of jazz, but I think one of the nice things about the Stormcast Eternals is the fact that they actually still have humanity and personality to them. Now, I know people would say that's quite harsh, and Space Marines already have that as well, if you look at the different chapters and stuff. But inherently, Space Marines are psychopathic killers, gene-bred for war, and they are terrible, terrible individuals. They may do good on occasion, but that's few and far between, and that's obviously always in the name of the Emperor and the success of the Imperium. Whereas Stormcast Eternals have personality, and they can be kind, they can be love, they can love, and all that kind of stuff. They have all their history, and they have this tragic backstory to them as well. And I think it really makes a difference when you see the depth that Games Workshop have really explored with the Stormcast Eternals in this Battletome, and also the other books that we've had at the moment as well. So this is a nice little breakdown of just a few of the different factions within the Stormcast Eternals. So you have the Hammers of Sigmar there, which are your kind of golden boys. You got the Hallowed Knights, who are the focus very much of this edition. You have the Celestial Vindicators, kind of like your crazy, wild, kill everything kind of guys. So they're like the Hammers of Sigmar are your kind of poster boys, the best of the best when it comes to Stormcast Eternals. Think of them almost like Ultramarines of the Stormcast Eternals in a way. Your Hallowed Knights are kind of defenders of artifacts and users of strange esoteric weapons to defeat their foes. Like, they will not go beyond using things that are potentially cursed in order to defeat their enemies. The Celestial Vindicators are just deadly fighters in combatants on the tabletop. They will not stop at anything to prove their strength, and that comes across in their in the way that they fight on the tabletop. The Anvils of the Heldenhammer, these are my Stormcast of choice, and I really like them because a lot of their obviously they've got the kind of really badass sort of chaplain style aesthetic to their army, but they are a force that are mostly born out of souls that were left behind in the world that was, and sort of the age of myth, and have been reborn once again to fight. So they are kind of old warriors, old souls in armor that are continuing the battle, and they're very cool. They're very sort of grim, dark, lots of skulls, white and red and cream for their armor and stuff is very nice. A little bit of a painting breakdown of the different Stormhosts. So again, there we've got Hammers of Sigmar, Hallowed Knights, Celestial Vindicators, the Anvils of the Heldenhammer, the Tempest Lords, who are kind of like wizards and stuff. The Celestial Warbringers, very cool. The Knights Excelsior, who are your like serious, almost like Space Marines, pretty much. If you were trying to find an analog, they will stop at nothing to make sure that no taint survives, in so much as they will even burn down entire cities if that is the way that they can achieve their ends. And then you have the Astral Templars, who are your kind of hunters, the Vanguard Chamber almost, and they are sort of like braggarts and drunks, and very much like kind of like the Space Wolves almost, if you wanted an analog between the Stormcast Eternals and Space Marines. Yes, maybe I should stop comparing them to Space Marines, even when I've said that they're not like Space Marines, but there we go. I suppose it's a good way to kind of describe them. And then we've got a nice little showcase here showing off the Anvils of the Heldenhammer as a full army. Very nice indeed. really cool new schemes going on here, alongside some of the new miniatures and stuff from the Ruination Chamber. So there's the Lord Vigilant on the Griffstalk and the Prosecutor, and the Lord Vigilant on the Morgriff. It's a shame that we didn't get a little bit of a conversion thing in this one, like we do with the Skaven Battletome. And these are just kind of like your standard miniatures, but there we go. Then we get a little bit of a breakdown in the history of the Stormcast Eternals. So we have the first initial throes of the Stormcast Eternals and how they fought. All your old models from the Sacrosanct Chamber there. Bit about the era of the beast. So that kind of covers. Here we go back. This kind of covers first edition and second edition. And then as we go through, this starts to look at third edition and how that played out, told in a very bite-sized way. And then we move on to fourth edition and the Hour of Ruin and the Ruination Chamber and how that's been added into the mix. Got some cool stuff there about the Defense of the Chain, which is the big mountain range that separated part of Akshi from the Skaven invasion, as well as some cool little breakdowns of sort of small, tiny conflicts and snippets that played out. I really like these little box outs. I think they're really fun to kind of get your head around interesting characters and get the tidbit of lore that you could then build up an army, which I think is quite cool. And it's been really nice to sort of read through those and see what other like nuggets of lore and background pop up as part of this. Then we have the breakdown of all the different characters. So you've got Bastian Carthalos in here once again, head of the Hammers of Sigmar, absolute badass. Andrasta, the Celestial Spear, fun little bit of interesting lore about her. She only has like the wings or something when viewed by, I think it's either when viewed by Stormcast or when viewed by just regular folks. One of the two doesn't see the wings, and they're almost just like a celestial vision of her as some kind of avenging angel, which I thought was quite nice. But yeah, so she's had an interesting story. Obviously, she was part of the third edition in the hunt for the various beasts that roam the land, but she's now being included in this one as an additional hunter and slayer for Sigmar, although she may be nearing the need for the Ruination Chamber fairly soon. We shall have to wait and see. We have your two mighty dragons. So you have Krondis and Karazai. They're back again. Iridan the Witness. So he is the first of the Stormcast Eternals to have claimed the life of another Stormcast, and gave him effectively the final death with the use of his axe. He was dragged in front of Sigmar for his actions, but Cryptborn was able to talk Sigmar down and show him that, alongside Iridan, this was the best way for them to deal with the situation as it currently stands. And he has an eidetic memory, so he's able to remember everything that the Stormcast that die tell him. So he seems absolutely perfect for leading the Ruination Chamber, which is what he does. So he remembers all of their past deeds for them, which is pretty cool. It's a bit of a shame that I think we got stuck with the same miniature for the Celestant Prime. I think that's a miniature that could really have done with an upgrade. Not that he needs Thunder Strike armor, I suppose, because he's the Celestant Prime, but maybe to make him feel a little less squat compared to some of the other heroes they have out there. Seen some really nice conversions of him where they've changed the helmet for like a head with a beard so that he sort of embodies Sigmar a little bit more rather than just being the faceless Stormcast Eternal. I'd love to know a little bit more about his character, because he was crafted by Sigmar but didn't awaken until Galmaraz was put in his hands. So it'd be very interesting to see kind of like who he is and like what role he plays in the wider story of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and what a little bit of the backstory is for the Celestant Prime. Maybe we'll see a book or something on that. That would be quite cool. The Black Talons. So have you seen any of Warhammer Plus? You'll know Neve Black Talon. And already in the books. So she is back alongside the rest of her friends, her assassins. Vandus Hammerhand, who has had something of a tragic backstory. So he was the big main character in the first edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. He's back. He fought once again against Korgus Kull, although Korgus Kull ascended to demonhood and killed one of his friends, one of the mighty Lord Celestants, and this has meant that Vandus has somewhat broken and now dwells within the Bleak Citadel as one of the Ruination Chamber, but not really, I don't think. I'll have to check his rules, actually. But yeah, he is probably not long for this world before he eventually goes off the deep end. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait and see. Talking of Cryptborn, here's his friend, back again on the back of that amazing dragon that we saw in the last edition of the game. Really nice new miniature for him. And a great pick if you want to really focus in on the Ruination Chamber and stuff like that. Gardas Steel Soul, survivor of the Garden of Nurgle. He's here with his super awesome Marvel or Hero Pose style miniature. Absolutely fantastic miniature, that one as well. Based on the old kind of Lord Celestant style miniature. Definitely worth picking up if you want to play as the Hallowed Knights. Although you could use him with anything. Taunus the Redeemed, another really nice character and one that kind of sets apart Stormcast from Space Marines with the whole corruption thing. So Taunus' soul, when he was immortal, claimed by Nurgle, and he became one of their mighty warriors and one of their mighty warlords until he was smashed down by Galmoraz and the Celestant Prime, only to have his soul redeemed and return as Taunus rather than Torglug. And now he fights as one of Sigmar's own, spreading the light of the Stormcast Eternals and Age of Sigmar throughout the realms from that awesome lantern of his. Now we have all your sort of basic troops and characters as well. So you've got your Lord Celestants, who got a new miniature, the Lord Imperatant, who was from last edition, Lord Relictors, and the Knight Relictors. Great base for a whole bunch of different Ruination themed armies, I think, if you want to go down that kind of route of Graves and the End and Apocalypse and stuff. I think that's a really nice touch. The Knights Arcanum and the Storm Covens. So that's one of the Warhammer Underworlds warbands that has returned. You then have the Knight Vexilor, who are your banner bearers, who can use those to heal those around them. And the Knight Questor, who got an absolutely fantastic new miniature as well. Really good in game if you can use them alongside the Questor Soulsworn, although they're quite a point sink, so you have to marry that up. The Knight Judicator, again, one of my favourite miniatures. I love anybody with bows and arrows. And this guy does that alongside two of his awesome Griffs, as you can see there. Really nice stuff there as well. All your core troops, so your Liberators, your Vigilors, your Vanquishers, and your Vindictors. The Annihilators and the Praetors, who are your sort of bodyguards for you to use alongside the rest of your forces. The Stormstrike Chariot, another great little miniature, not one that I've necessarily thought about adding to my force, but there you go. And the Questor Soulsword themselves, who are a Warcry warband, who have been included as part of this alongside the Light Questor. Very good at taking and holding objectives and making a big focus of that in enemy territory. Not a bad addition there, as you can see. And then some slightly more older miniatures as well. So the Lord Celestant and the Star Drake and the Drake Sworn Templars. Although I quite like the box outs that we get here again, talking about interesting characters and different people, because these are the kind of things, as I was saying earlier, that are really nice for people to start looking at when they want to build armies and come up with themed forces that aren't necessarily linked to some of the bigger named characters. So you could use this to make Lord Celestant Imperius and his awesome drakes on the tabletop. I think that would be a really nice touch. The Dracothian Guard in their various forms. I still think they look really wooden, but I suppose they're there for a reason. The Stormdrake Guards and the Knight Draconis. I mean, these are the best dragons, effectively, and I really like those. But yeah, another character for you to check out there, Aldous the Bold, who was fighting once again alongside the Hammers of Sigmar and stuff on the tabletop. And then the rest of the Vanguard Chamber, which, despite being slightly older miniatures, I actually think these ones tend to hold up quite nicely, even though they're in the older armor style. I think they still work fairly well. So you got the Lord Aquilor, the Vanguard Hunters, and the Vanguard Paladors, alongside the Raptors and the Stormstrike Paladors as well there, as you can see. So the Stormstrike Paladors, newer additions to the range. Then we have some stuff for the Ruination Chamber, and here's where things really start to het up. This is where you want to focus things, I think, in the new edition. if you're looking to build a themed army. So you have the Lord Vigilant on the Morgriff, alongside the Knight Azeros, which is the other miniature you can make from the Taunus the Redeemed kit. I actually quite like the face for Taunus, rather than having the helmet. But I know they've done that for a reason, probably. And the Prosecutors there as well, which are returning. The Lord Terminos, so these are the Stormcast Eternals who watch over the others in the Ruination Chamber, and when it's time for them to be taken down, they are the ones that deliver the Executioner's Blow and take them out of action, and deliver them that final death, as it were, which I think was quite nice. Nice in the cool sense. We've also got the Lord Vigilant on the Griffstalker there, with the Beasts of Mordor, and this is a really interesting bit as well, because the whole stuff with Mordor is quite an interesting thing, because they revere Mordor almost as much as they revere Sigmar, and you get the sense of that in some of the earlier bits of the book, like with the obviously you get it with the Anvils of the Hells and Hammer, because they also look at Mordor. But the Astral Templars, for example, as well, they have like a beast-style Gurish god that they kind of worship or revere in some way too. So there's not just the love of Sigmar in here, there's also the love of other deities. And I think it's one of the other forces, one of the other Stormhosts is really intertwined with Alariel, and they worship her almost as much as they worship Sigmar, which I think is a really nice little touch. And the fact that it's not kind of outlawed within the Stormhosts, I think is a really nice addition to the background for these guys. You've also got your Lord Veritant there, who's the new miniature, and the heads of the Memorian Order, and then your classic Reclusians. Well, I say classic, your new Reclusians, who were included in the new Skaven type box set for the first time. These are the Stormcast Eternals who are on the edge of breaking almost, and they are fighting as hard as they can to retain some of who they once were, whilst also battling the forces of chaos and beyond that are threatening the realms. They are absolutely freaking awesome. If you've read the Skaven Tide novel, it is a really good look at why Reclusians are very cool, and you should definitely have some in your army. And enjoy them as part of their background stuff as well. So a bit of painting and all this kind of stuff here as well. I break down some of the new terrain. So you've got the Stormreach Portal, the Magic of the High Heavens there, so your endless spells. And then we get to the rules, which we will come back and have a look at in a little bit later. But as you can see, a absolutely massive tome full of information about the Stormcast Eternals. I mean, what page did we get up to there? This is that's 80, 88, 87, 86. So like 85-ish pages worth of lore for the Stormcast Eternals, going into a little bit more detail about them and who they are. I genuinely think if you're looking to get into Age of Sigmar and you want a very simple and easy army to paint, the Stormcast Eternals are a really good option for you to choose from. The other thing that's really nice about them is that you can really have some fun personalizing them and building up interesting characters around the Stormcast Eternals, because they are more human. And the fact that Warhammer Age of Sigmar includes the idea of regiments of renown and armies of renown, and bringing together other elements of different order forces into one grand alliance almost, I think is a really nice touch and helps you bring together really interesting narrative forces on the tabletop. It helps that I think the Stormcast Eternals are absolutely stunning miniatures. They're a joy to paint. Like, I've painted so many of the Anvils of the Helden Hammer now in this scheme, and it comes out really, really nicely with the black and gold, the red, and that sort of off-white cream. And I think people will have a lot of fun diving in and creating their own Stormhosts as well, and genuinely enjoying the lore and the background behind them. But yeah, don't discount the Stormcast Eternals as just Sigmarines, as I've been alluding to earlier. I think there's a lot more to them than people give them credit. And if you dive into some of the background and the lore for them now, especially the stuff that we've seen currently about the Ruination Chamber and Stormcast Eternals coming close to the edge, I think you start to learn a little bit more about them as individuals and why they are so interesting for building armies and telling stories. There's definitely something to be said about maybe diving into things like the Age of Sigmar Soulbound rulebook and the role-playing game to find out a little bit more about them and maybe playing them in your games rather than just playing as just mortals or elves or whatever. Because I think it could be really fascinating seeing what people do with that and the stories they tell, especially through successive reforgings. But yeah, I'd say that much like with the Skaven Battletome, this is a pretty decent chunk of information, background, lore on the Stormcast Eternals and who they are, how they fight, and why you should be playing as them on the tabletop. I will say, as someone who has kind of read around a lot about Stormcast Eternals over the last couple of editions, there's a fair amount of new stuff in there, things like the Ruination Chamber. I wouldn't say that they have a lot of information in here that wouldn't be known to you already. I think this is it was quite a nice summing up of where things have gone with the Stormcast Eternals, but I'm not entirely sure that this was as in-depth maybe as the Skaven Battletome, despite how many pages have been given over to the Stormcast Eternals. It gives you a really nice primer of things, but it maybe would have been nice to maybe see a few more little stories and stuff in here and things like that, alongside the sort of information about the individuals and who they are and how they fight as part of different armies. But yeah, a fun little breakdown, hopefully that was, of the Stormcast Eternals and where they sit and why you should maybe have a think about picking up the Battletome and having a read about them. As I say, make sure to check out the Skaventide novel. It's a really good novel for covering Stormcast Eternals and why they're awesome, as well as the Black Talon books. They're really good as well. They give a good insight into Stormcast Eternals. The Age of Sigmar Soulbound book for the role-playing game is also a really nice resource for just learning anything about Age of Sigmar, as well as the Stormcast in general. And I would also generally recommend checking out the Realms of Ruin video game that they came out with for consoles and PC not too long ago. It might not be the best game, but it's got a really interesting story, and again gives you a really good insight into Stormcast Eternals and who they are and how they fight. And I definitely think it'd be worth checking out if you want to know a little bit more about them as an army on the tabletop. But yeah, before I waffle on too long, hopefully that was an interesting look through the background and the lore of the Stormcast Eternals. If you have any questions about Stormcast Eternals and lore, please drop them down below in the comments. I will always endeavour to try and answer you if I can. I'll be moving on to have a look at the rules in a little bit more detail soon. But apart from that, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'll be moving on to make another one very, very soon. Thank you very much. Comment, like, subscribe, and share, and do all that good stuff. And I'll talk to you guys in the near future. Bye for now.